So I'm going to demonstrate the socket programming app. It's a quiz, and I'll begin by demonstrating the full functionality. So I click Start Server, which is on the left, and we get server started. It's now listening for a client. I have one client here, but to demonstrate concurrency, I'm going to open another client. I'll call this one Bill, and I'll call this one Bob. So now the user has entered their name. They hit connect to establish a connection to the server. So once they connect to the server, they send their username to the server, which is received. As we can see here, the server has outputted Bill, which is our username, and the server then sends question 1 was sent, and we can see that's true because question 1 is here. And it says correct answer is sent. Correct answer is not displayed to the user. It's a variable stored now in client on the client side, which can be used to test the user's input. So we've connected Bill, so let's connect Bob. We can show that these are working concurrently. So the same thing happened for Bob. We sent his username, which is displayed here. The server has responded with the first question, and it also sent the correct answer. So 3 times 6 is the first question. Bill's an idiot, so he's going to say D, and his incorrect answers has increased by 1 because he was wrong. And as soon as he clicks D, the check happens to make sure that to test if his answer matches with the correct answer. It didn't, so incorrect answers increased by 1. But then immediately afterwards, the client sent another request to the server asking for question 2, and the server responded. Let's get Bob is going to get the correct answer. So the correct answer was B, and his correct answers increased by 1, and now he's requested question 2. So if I continue with the app, Bill knows this answer, so he's going to say D, but Bob, he's not too sure, and he clicks A, and he's incorrect. So we can see that Bill has now got 1 and 1, and Bob also has 1 and 1. And again, once the question is answered, the request is sent to the server for question 3. Question 3, 8 times 9. Bill knows this one as well. He says C, and then we get a pop-up then that explains the final result to the user, saying you answered 2 correctly. We click OK, and the client closes because that's the end of the quiz. And Bob answered 1 correctly. So that is the app. I'll now walk you through the code. So we start by on the server side by including a list, and this would be a list of the clients. To actually start the server, I first obtain the IP address by using DNS get host entry localhost, because I'm using both client and server on the same machine, and I then start a TCP listener to listen on a certain socket, on a certain port, using port 8080 to listen to, and the IP is the localhost. So this new TCP listener called server is going to be listening on these ports for a connection. We then try to start the server. So this try attempts to start the listener, and it's only when server.start has been initialized or activated that once this code is run, that is when the server or the listener begins listening for incoming connections. And because this was successful, we output to the console server started, just for testing purposes, so we can actually see it working. If it can't start the server, if this cannot be completed, we'll get the exception, which is outputted then to the console, and then we'll accept another user input then in console.read before closing. So this is now waiting on a connection from the client. So if I demonstrate this, server started, we just discussed how that happens, and if I hit user start, right now no code is being run because I haven't clicked btn connect, which is this button here. So to start with, when I click connect, a check will happen to make sure that the user has entered something into the username text box. So if I click connect right now, it says required. So if username.trim equals nothing, which it does because I didn't enter anything, then we display this label to inform us that we need to enter this information. We then clear the text box, so if I put spaces in this text box, it'll then be cleared. and then txt username.focus. It also puts the mouse back in here, so we can just continue typing after hitting connect, and we'll be fine. We'll just continue from there for usability. So I'm going to enter a valid name, and I'm going to hit connect. So if username.trim equals nothing, it doesn't, so we go to the else, and this is where we start connecting to the server. So we set up a TCP client using the same IP, localhost, and the same port 8080 as the server, so we can connect. And this is how the initial connection is set up. Before we send the first message, code server side is run. So here we've set up a client class, which is here, and this will store every variable relating to a client. So once that's set up, we then say player TCP client equals server.accept TCP client, and this is the line of code that accepts the initial connection, which is set up here on the client side. So they connect, the server accepts. We then clear data just to make sure that all these variables that accept messages are empty before we start collecting messages. And then we run player.receiveData. Player is the name of the client, and receiveData is this function here. And what receiveData does is it starts a new thread called thread listener, and this thread will be given to this client. So we the way the server is set up is the main thread will loop this block of code, as it will constantly wait and listen for new clients to accept. Meanwhile, a new thread is created every time a user connects, and this thread then will deal with requests from that client. So receiver equals new thread thread listener. So when this receiver thread starts, it will start by calling thread listener function, which is here. The thread listener sets up a stream called TCP client.getStream. I'm using stream sockets for this quiz. It's better than the alternative datagrams because using stream sockets use TCP, and TCP is more reliable than datagrams, as it includes a lot of error checking to make sure that the destination has received all the packets correctly and in the right order, so none were lost or duplicated during transmission. Yeah, if I didn't include if I didn't do a stream socket, I did a datagram socket, I would need to manually have code in client and server to make sure that they received the data correctly. So once the stream is set up, we then say console.writeLine listening for data. This makes sure that this informs us that the thread is being set up and is running, and then it loops this block of code here. So while true, the thread will constantly check if stream data is available. What this does is it checks the stream to see if there's any data available to be read, and if so, we carry out stream.read. So right now, what we're going to be reading, the first time we're going to be reading is going to be the username. So on the client side, after the initial connection is set up, it sends the first message, which is username. So send data is the function, username is the data to be sent. So we prepare to send the data by using int byte count encoding ASCII get byte count of data. So it'll get the byte count or the character count for the user's username, and then it'll start a byte array, which is the size of byte count, and byte count is the size of the username. So the send data byte array is going to be the same size as the user's name. We then send the username, so we go send data, which is this byte array, and we say encoding.ascii get bytes data. So we take the user's name and we store it in send data, and then stream.write send data from index 0, so the first character, all the way to send data.length, which is the last character. So this then will write every single character to the stream, and then it will run get questions. So once the client has written to the stream, we go back to the server. It reads the stream, and receives the username and stores it in received data, which is the one of the client class variables, which stores data, and it'll receive the data from index 0 all the way up to receive data.length. And then for every single byte in received data, it checks to see if that byte is null, and if that byte is null, we break, so we exit this statement. But if not, if the byte is anything other than null, that character then is added to another variable called message. Message.append convert to char dot to string. So this takes the byte, converts it to a character, and then converts it to a string, and that's appended then to the message. So as this is looping, the message will get from 1 character to 2 characters to 3 characters, and it will build the string for the message. And then we output this to the console to make sure that just to test if it's working. And then we call the function server.sendQuestions, and we pass to that then the message and then the client information, the client class. So we call send question functions in server. So if I go back to server and go to send questions, this is where we process the data, to make sure that to understand what the data the client sent and what data they need. So the very first thing we receive is the player name. So if the player name is empty, the player name being this variable here, if this is empty, then it means this is the very first communication, the very first piece of data sent. So we say if the player name is empty, then we take the data, which is the data that the client sent, and we apply it to player.name. And once we have this, then we then send back to the client the first question. So player.sendData, send data being this byte array. Yeah, player.sendData equals encoding.getBytes. So we convert anything that's within these brackets into ASCII, so it can be applied to the byte array. So we say question 1. This is question 1 that's been sent. So it's 3 times 6 equals, and then plus system environment new line. So it adds a new line, and then A16 plus new line plus the next potential answer, plus new line plus next answer plus new line plus next answer, and this is sent to the user, and it looks like this. These are every new line here is this. So when it receives it, it can immediately put it onto a new line. So once the send data array is holds data, we then say player.stream.write, and then we start writing that data to the stream, which sends it to the client. And then we say console.writeLine question 1 sent, and then we go back to the client. The client ran get questions, and get questions starts by setting up variables receive data and message, similar to what the server had, to receive the data, and then stream.read, it reads the stream, so it reads the question, and then for each byte in that received data, it'll apply to a message, to a message string, or if it's null, it breaks, and this prevents null values from being added into the message. So this first receives the message, and then so we go text box, text question box dot text equals question plus, and then the queue number then is the question number that we're currently on, plus colon for decoration, and then we say new line and then message dot toString. So this outputs as the following: question 1, new line, and then the question, and all of this was received from the server. There's another read directly after this, but first we got to clear the clear receive data and message, ready to receive the next message, and then we receive the next message then, which is the correct answer. So the server then sends player.sendData send get bytes B, because the correct answer to 3 times 6 is 18, and 18 belongs to option B. So this is hard coded in, so we say B is the data to be sent, and then we write that to the stream to send it to the client, and then we output to the server that that's been sent, and then the client then runs the same code as above to receive the data, apply it to the message, and then this time we don't need to show it to the user. This is something we've got to keep hidden, so we apply it instead to a variable on the client side, and then we say the button answer is visible for all 4 answers. So this then shows these questions so the user can answer. This is done so users can't click buttons before they connect to the server. So now the user must click a button to answer the question, and to do this we've got 4 buttons here, so I'm going to click B. So what happened there, I click B, which is this function. So we say answer check, and I pass we call the answer check function, and I pass it the variable, well, it's not a variable, I pass it the string B. So if I go to answer check, which is this function, so what this does is debug write line correct answer. It outputs the correct answer to the output, which is here. This was done for testing purposes, and what the next thing that the client does, it matches the user's answer with the correct answer. So if the correct answer matches the user's answer, then the correct answers variable increases by 1, sorry, which is represented by these 2 pluses, and then we display this new variable to the user, so we update this label. So lbl correct answers.text equals correct answers, which is this text, plus correct answers.toString, which is this value here. Else, so if the user isn't correct, we pretty much do the same thing, but for the incorrect answers variable and the incorrect answers label. After that, we increase the question number, and then we do a check to see if all the questions have been answered. There's 3 questions in this quiz, so if the question number is greater than 3, we will display the final message to the user. If not, we say else send data question number dot toString. So we then send question number. We go to send data function, and we pass the question number. So send data is this function. So we send another request to the server. This time the request being sent is simply a number. In this case it's going to be number 2, because we've already answered question 1, we want question 2. So the client thread listener has been looping this entire time, waiting for data to be available in the stream. Data is now available in the stream because the client has sent a request for question 2, so it reads the stream, it adds the message to the message variable, and then it sends the message and the client to the server, to the server.send questions function, and then it interprets the data again. So send question. So if player name equals blank, the player name isn't blank because we have already applied the first username to it. So we go else if data equals 2, and data does equal 2 because this is the second question, and the client sent number 2 to represent that that's the question they wanted. Then we send the second question, which is the same method as here. We write the question with new lines and possible answers for A, B, C, and D, and we write that to the send data variable. We then say player.stream.write, so we write this player data variable to the stream and sends that to the client, and then we output it to the console to test that it's working. The client receives it, and it carries out this get questions function again, as can be seen here. So it sends the data and then immediately waits to receive it. So it happens again. Get question. So stream.read. Clear the variables. So it's ready to receive the new message. Receives the new message, which is the second question. Displays the second questions. Then it clears the variables again to receive the next message, which is the correct answer. And then the server then will send D, because the correct answer for this question is D. So D is now the message that's been sent to the client. Client receives it with this piece of code and then applies the correct answer to the correct answer variable, and then users must answer the question again. So I'm going to say A, and then this process repeats again, but the data that's being sent is question number, which is, this time is 3 for question 3. So it goes to the thread listener, the thread reads it, interprets it, and sends it to the message.append, sends it to the message variable. Message variable is passed to send questions, and then send questions, then here, checks if the player name is empty, it is not, checks if the data is 2, it is not, checks if the data is 3, which it is. So then it sends the third question and the third correct answer back to the user. Then the user then would answer the final question. So 8 times 9, that's 72, and that's my answer. And I got answered 2 answers correctly. So in the answer check, if the once the check is complete, the very next thing that happens is we increase the question number, and if the question number is greater than 3, which it is because we've answered 3 questions, then it displays the final results to the user, which is the message box.show you answered this many and correct answers correctly, quiz is over, and there's an OK button to let them end it. So once they've clicked OK, the stream is closed and then the application is exited, and that would be the end of the communications.